It was one of those rare mornings in Washington, D.C., when the courtroom was filled before the judge even arrived. Lawyers, interns, and even a few journalists had shown up early. Not because the case was famous, but because the man at the center of it was. Denzel Washington, known to the world as a brilliant actor, walked in quietly, carrying no briefcase, no assistant behind him, no team of lawyers. Just a thin folder in his hand and a calm look in his eyes. No one expected him to show up like this. No announcement, no interviews, just silence. Until now. The clerk called the case, and heads turned. Plaintiff, Mr. Denzel Washington. Representing himself, a low hum passed through the courtroom. Some raised their eyebrows. A few scoffed. Judge John Roberts glanced up from his papers, almost surprised. "You'll be handling your own defense?" the judge asked, adjusting. His glasses, tone flat but curious. "Yes, Your Honor," Denzel answered simply. People looked at one another, some whispering under their breath. It wasn't just unusual, it was unheard of. A man like him going up against one of the biggest corporate law firms in the country without a single lawyer on his side. The defense attorney, Charles Harris, smiled like he already won. Expensive suit, polished shoes, years of courtroom experience. He turned to Denzel and said softly, "You sure you're in the right room?" Denzel didn't reply. He didn't need to. The case was simple on paper. A global tech company had used Denzel's face and voice in an AI ad without permission. They claimed it was an error. They offered him a settlement. He turned it down. It wasn't about money. It was about dignity. Judge Roberts leaned forward, slightly, watching Denzel with cautious interest. To the courtroom, it may have looked like a bold move, but to Roberts, it looked like arrogance. A man stepping into a ring he didn't belong in. The opening arguments began. Harris took the lead, with confidence, using legal terms most people in the room didn't understand. He spoke fast, proud, expecting the judge to nod along. Some jurors even looked lost. Then Denzel stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pace or perform. He just told the truth. Slowly, clearly, line by line. No big words, no drama. Just honesty. He ended his statement by looking straight at Judge Roberts and saying, "Your Honor, I didn't come here to act. I came here because when people in power break the rules, someone has to speak up, even if it's just one man." No one moved. Even the judge didn't speak for a moment. Something shifted. This wasn't going to be the case they expected, and Denzel Washington was not the man they thought he was. By the time part one of the hearing ended, the room wasn't whispering anymore. People were quiet, not out of boredom, but because something real was happening. Judge Roberts sat back in his chair, tapping his fingers, pretending to be unimpressed. But behind that calm look, his curiosity was growing. Charles Harris, the company's lead attorney, stood again. He smiled as if he was still in control. His voice was louder this time, filled with confidence. "Your Honor," Harris began, "this entire matter is a misunderstanding. My client has already offered a generous settlement. Mr. Washington chose to reject it. That was his right, of course, but let's not waste the court's time. There was no harm done." Denzel looked straight ahead, listening carefully. Then, Harris added, "This case doesn't belong in court. It belongs in public relations. Maybe Mr. Washington is confusing a courtroom with a press room." A few people chuckled. Even Judge Roberts smirked for a second. Denzel didn't blink. He stood slowly, holding one paper in his hand. "Your Honor, may I respond?" The judge gave a small nod. Briefly, Denzel stepped forward, still calm, still quiet. "I'm not here because of public attention," he said. "I'm here because my face, my voice, were used without my permission. I have a right to decide where my image goes. We all do. If it happened to a nurse or a teacher, they wouldn't have the platform to speak. But I do. So I'm using it. Not for me, for them." He held up the paper. "This isn't just an ad. This is a contract my team found, buried in their files. It clearly states they used an AI model based on my interviews, my speeches, without even asking." Now the courtroom leaned in. Judge Roberts adjusted his glasses and nodded for the clerk to collect the paper. Harris looked uneasy for the first time. Denzel continued, "They say it's a mistake. I say it's a choice. And I don't care about a check. I care about being respected." His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't move. Judge Roberts looked at him longer this time. Not as a celebrity, but as someone who just made a point. That was hard to ignore. Then he turned to Harris. "Counsel, how does your client explain this document?" Harris opened his mouth, then closed it. "We'll need time to review it." The judge nodded. "You'll have it. We'll continue. Tomorrow." The gavel came down. As people stood up to leave, no one laughed. No one whispered. Denzel walked out alone, just like he walked in. But now, everyone was watching with a little more respect. And Judge Roberts, for the first time that day, looked concerned. The next morning, the courtroom was even more packed. Word had spread. Denzel Washington wasn't just standing up to a billion-dollar company. He was doing it alone. And he was winning the room without raising his voice. Judge Roberts entered with his usual cold focus, but something in his eyes had shifted. He wasn't amused anymore. He was alert. Denzel stood. Ready, calm as ever. No suit upgrade, same folder. Same quiet confidence. Across the room, Charles Harris looked different too. The ease was gone from his face. His team had reviewed the document overnight, and they knew. It was real. Before the hearing resumed, Judge Roberts looked directly at Harris. "Have you had time to review the material presented yesterday?" Harris cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor. And while we admit the document appears to be from our internal system, we maintain that Mr. Washington gave implied consent through past agreements." Denzel didn't even wait for the judge to ask. He stepped forward. "Your Honor, may I respond?" he said. Judge Roberts nodded. "Go ahead." Denzel pulled out another paper. "This is my original contract with their agency. It clearly states that any future use of my image or voice requires direct approval, not implied, not assumed. Direct." He placed the paper on the table in front of him, then looked up. "They used AI to clone my voice, my smile, my tone. It's not just a video. It's me without being me. And they used it to sell something I don't believe in." You could feel the air in the room shift again. Even the court reporter paused for half a second before typing. Then Denzel did something unexpected. He turned toward the jury. "I'm not here asking for sympathy," he said. "I'm asking for something simple, permission. The same thing any of you would want if someone used your face to speak words you never said." Judge Roberts leaned forward. He didn't interrupt. He didn't blink. Then he said, "That's enough for today. Both sides will return tomorrow." Prepared for closing arguments. As the room emptied, Harris walked quickly out the side door. No one followed him. Reporters didn't chase him. They followed Denzel, but Denzel didn't stop to speak. He didn't wave. He just walked straight ahead, like a man on a mission. Back inside, Judge Roberts stayed seated for a moment longer than usual. He tapped his pen slowly, staring at the two documents left on the table. What he once saw as a publicity stunt was starting to feel like something else. Real, and something told him this wasn't going to be the lesson Denzel learned. It might be the one he did. By day 3, the tension in the courtroom had changed. It wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about what it meant. The room was full again, but this time, people came not out of curiosity, but out of respect. Judge Roberts entered, expression tight, hiding whatever thoughts had kept him awake the night before. The clerk called the case, and both sides took their place. This time, Denzel didn't speak first. Harris did. He stood slowly, trying to appear steady. But the words didn't come as smooth as they had before. "Your Honor," Harris began, "while we still believe this was an unfortunate misunderstanding, we now acknowledge that mistakes were made, and Mr. Washington's contract was, in fact, violated." A hush fell over the room. He continued, "My client would like to make a formal apology and offer a new settlement amount that reflects the seriousness of the matter." Then he looked at Denzel and added, "We hope this can be resolved respectfully without further damage to either side." Denzel stood. Calm, direct. just like always. "I appreciate the apology," he said. "But I didn't come here for a payout. I came here for something money can't buy." He paused for just a second. "Accountability." He turned toward Judge Roberts. "If this ends with a check, the message is that powerful companies can do what they want and clean it up. Later with money, I'm not okay with that, and I don't think the people watching are either." Judge Roberts watched him in silence. No reaction. But something behind his eyes had shifted. Then Denzel walked to the middle of the room. He didn't look at the lawyers. He didn't even look at the judge. He looked at the jury. "You don't have to be famous to be copied, to be misused, to be ignored. If it happened to you, you'd want someone to stand up. I'm standing up. Not because I'm perfect, but because I know what silence costs." He stepped back. That was all he said. No one clapped. No one spoke. It didn't feel like a show. It felt like the truth. Judge Roberts cleared his throat. "Closing arguments. Will be heard tomorrow. Court is adjourned for today." The gavel struck. But it wasn't just the end of the session. It was the moment things changed. Harris looked defeated. Denzel looked peaceful. And Judge Roberts, he sat there a moment longer, eyes on Denzel, not with doubt, but with something else. Recognition. The man he tried to mock was no fool. He was something far more rare in that room. He was right. The final day had come. The courtroom was full before. The doors even opened. Journalists, students, lawyers. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. Judge Roberts sat at the bench, quiet and unreadable. The jury waited. Both sides were ready. Only one thing was left. Closing arguments. Charles. Harris stood first. His voice was low, no longer bold or dramatic. "We admit our mistakes. We failed to protect Mr. Washington's rights, and we regret that. But this is not just about one man. It's about how fast technology moves and how slow the law follows. My client didn't mean to harm anyone. They simply acted before asking." He looked toward the jury. "Punishment doesn't fix that. Clearer rules do." Then he sat down. No emotion, just an exhausted end to a long week. Denzel stood up. He didn't bring any papers, no folder, just his hands in front of him. "I've heard people say this case is about AI, about contracts, about the future. But really, it's about something older than all that." He paused. "Respect." He turned to the jury. "I don't care how big a company gets. You don't get to borrow someone's face, voice, or soul and call it a mistake. If you do it once and don't pay attention, you'll do it again. And next time, it'll be someone who can't speak up." He looked around the courtroom, eyes stopping on each juror. "You don't have to be a lawyer to see what's right. You just have to ask yourself one thing. If this happened to me, what would I want someone to do?" He stepped back. The room was silent. Not a single cough. Not a single shuffle. Just stillness. Judge Roberts looked at both sides. Then he looked at the jury. "You've heard the arguments. You'll now begin your deliberation." The jury left the room. An hour passed. Then 2. People whispered, paced, stared at the doors. Denzel sat alone, focused, like he had all week. No nerves, just purpose. Finally, the jury returned. Everyone rose. Judge Roberts asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. "We have, Your Honor." He handed over the paper. Judge Roberts read it silently, then looked up. "We find in favor of Mr. Washington." Gasps. Applause tried to break out, but the judge raised a hand. It stopped. The room stayed still. Then, for the first time since the trial began, Judge Roberts spoke directly to Denzel. "You handled yourself with grace, clarity, and intelligence. This court thanks you." Denzel simply nodded. No smile. No victory speech. He wasn't here to win applause. He was here to change something, and he just did. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the weight of the verdict stayed in the air. People didn't just leave. They lingered, talked quietly, processing what had happened. Outside, reporters surrounded Denzel. But he didn't rush to answer questions or pose for cameras. He took a deep breath, then spoke simply. This was Never about me, he said. It was about everyone who doesn't have a voice when their image or words are stolen. Today we sent a message. Nobody owns your story but you. The crowd listened, feeling the truth in his words. Meanwhile, inside, the courthouse, Judge Roberts sat alone for a moment longer. He looked over the documents from the case again, not as a judge, but as a man who had learned something important. He had tried to trip Denzel up, to show that fame couldn't equal substance. But what he found was the opposite. He found a man who knew his rights, his values, and who wasn't afraid to stand up quietly, but powerfully. The judge reached for his phone. He typed a quick message and hit send. Later that day, Denzel received a call. It was Judge Roberts. "Mr. Washington," the judge said, voice steady but sincere. "You taught me something important this week. I wanted to say thank you." Denzel smiled softly. "Thank you, Your Honor. That means a lot." As the sun set over the city, the story made headlines across the country, not just about the legal victory, but about respect, courage, and standing up for what is right. And somewhere deep inside the courtroom walls, a lesson was written. Not in law books, but in real life. That sometimes the greatest power isn't in the words you speak, but in the truth you live.